Uh, Hello and welcome to NRI Samay Community Radio. I'm Srikanth, and today I'll be in conversation with Sanjeev Sabhlok ji, an ex-Indian bureaucrat who joined the Indian Administrative Services in the year 1982, worked for almost 18 years, and now a political philosopher and an Indian politician. So time and again, Sanjeev ji propagates on many forums that India's failure of governance arises from bad policy. It's not poor implementation that caused India's problems. For the bad policy can never be implemented properly in the first place, and that's the fundamental reason why we are failing. And also to know more about Sanjeev ji, his work and all his thoughts, please visit his revolutionary blog, as he calls it, http //sabhlokcity.com, sabhlokcity.com, sabhlokcity.com. So in February 1998, after coming to a conclusion that bad politics can't be changed by our existing political or bureaucratic leaders, Sanjeev ji thought that there's a need to join or even form a national liberal political party and become part of a political alternative to transform Indian governance using evidence-based world's best policies. In pursuit of his goal, he resigned from IAS in January 2001. So for NRI Samay and our listeners, it would be a great opportunity to understand and learn more about liberal ideas of Sanjeev Sabhlok ji. Sanjeev ji, namaste. Welcome to the program, and thanks for taking the time to be on our show today.
Namaste, Srikanth. Thanks very much for having me on this program. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sanjeev ji, multiple shades of your personality, you understand bureaucracy, politics, blogging, economics. You're a writer, author, and I'm fundamentally curious to know, what do you want people to recognize you as, sir? What's the field you like the best of all that I've mentioned right now?
Well, Srikanth, this is actually an interesting question. This is the last thing I want to do in my life, which is called, public policy and things of the sort. It so happens that my father sort of persuaded me to join the IAS, and I took it. I said, okay, theek hai, 10 saal kaam karte hain. After 10 years, I'll, review and I'll do whatever. So unfortunately, I learned so many things in the process, and then I had to learn some more, did some economics, etc. I was not particularly interested in economics. I'm more of a science guy and more of painting and art. So this is a bit of a diversion for me. It's actually not my main field. Hopefully one fine day when all this is settled and India is obviously on the right track, then I will switch back to what I really like, which is science and painting. So if you talk of field, this is simply kind of diversion. But it's obviously taken me 30 years, and hopefully it will finish in the next 15 years.
And then by 65, you added a few more now, painting and science, right? You added a few more now, painting and science, which I didn't even realize that you're good at painting and also very interested in science. That's that side of you.
That's my passion. So this is really my compulsion, because it turns out that public policy is so badly done in India. And as I've realized and actually implemented many of these things, it turns out that the solutions are fairly simple. But the problem has been that our, as I say, the leaders have been A, very incompetent, B, the bureaucrats have been very, very lazy. No one has been communicating these things, except I think a few journalists have been talking about it over the years. And, writers like Gurcharan Das have been trying to persuade people, etc. But overall, we've had a very poor record of systematic thinking in India, and we are very much prone to shortcuts and so on. So just like, imagine science. So if you think of scientific method, I don't know your background, but, my background, I love science. So we talk of evidence-based stuff, whatever works, why does it work, what's the hypothesis? And as you go into this particular thing, you realize that there is actually a science of public policy. And in all over the world, it's widely understood and implemented. For example, you're in USA. I studied there, and you really, the results you see there are based on the work of Jefferson, Washington, Madison, and so on. And thereafter, there have been revisions and modifications and continuous improvements, like Reagan's regulatory impact assessment process, which is the first in the world. The Office of Budget Management there, really working on world-class kind of reforms with red tape reduction and many other such kind of activities. Even though they are broadly Keynesian, the entire government, I think, on the whole, they have been following very good policy. Similarly, and that's based on the fact that there is a lot of research going on, and people are following it. But in India, we don't have a regulatory impact assessment process. So till today, the policy formation is done by whimsical bureaucrats and politicians who are totally, working in the medieval era, essentially. If you think about science versus. So therefore, scientific approach is what I think, and critical thinking is what we need to do, which is what I'm trying to suggest to people. Yeah.
Also, we have interviewed Ashok Khemka, the IAS officer, and also a few other IAS officers that we are pursuing to talk to them and understand what's going on in the bureaucracy, of course. You are a very successful IAS officer, sir. So tell us a few of your experiences as an IAS officer. What were some of the best experiences as bureaucrat, and what are the deficiencies? Having experienced some of the hard facts working through the system on a transactional basis, there should be something right and there should be something wrong going on. Let's talk about both of these shades, sir.
Okay. Oh, well, look, as far as the right is concerned, I think there was a time when there was a need for the IAS. And I look back in time and the decision of Sardar Patel to actually allow the IAS to continue, because Nehru did not want the IAS. He wanted to completely have a new system. But Patel, being a wise man, said, look, we do need some kind of a system where we infiltrate across the states, because the states were very new and he was trying to organize the country. So the IAS was designed with a view of having people cross-pollinate the country and therefore bring about some underlying stability and strength. So the steel frame concept still works. That is actually what is holding the country together in many ways. And although it's fraying quite a bit, the reality is that IAS officers, as IAS officers, we work very, very hard. In terms of, when I say very hard, I don't mean all the time, but I think when the need comes, then people are working like really crazy. Conducting elections, for example, is a very classic example of the high-quality work done by the IAS officers and the Election Commission, which is, in fact, probably better than the USA in many ways, because we don't have the kind of mess-up sometimes that found there, despite the size of this country and despite the very poor resources available. So we see that there is actually some kind of professionalism in the system, and that is taught by the National Academy, where I also taught. So essentially, you do have what I call a minimum standard of governance being provided by the IAS, and I was definitely proud to be part of it, and happy to be join it and learn and contribute and be a professor myself in the academy and so on. So there are those kind of good things, and of course the other part is you are constantly in touch with the most senior people in the country in every sphere. Your doors are open for you everywhere you go. You can practically walk into Prime Minister's office, with your batchmates and friends out there. So essentially, it's a very nice system of camaraderie and those brotherhood kind of things. So it's really useful for India to have it, or to have had it in the past. And I think that's where it should be sort of mentioned as a good thing to have happened. Over the last many years, it has actually degraded quite a bit in terms of, I won't go into details, but essentially the capacity of IAS officers to fight back the continuously lowering standards of the politicians, that ability has significantly slackened, as many IAS officers themselves have started participating in these political activities. So there was a time when people would fight back and would demand written orders before they actually executed anything, or would any unconstitutional order would be rebelled. And we have all this kind of training even in the academy, even in '94 when we were training people that you must follow the orders. Consider, for example, the Modi's massive events of having dead bodies carried over. For example, in Ahmedabad after the killings in Godhra, these kind of nonsense would not have happened had any sensible IAS officer been there. But the reality is that the thing had got politicized, because you don't allow any of these kind of things to happen. And so the training that we give in the academy did not obviously reach. There are a lot of politicization. This is just one example, but this is everywhere. So the net result has been the IAS is no longer trusted, not credible, and I don't think people trust each other. So there's corruption and politicization, which means that it has become basically a branch of the political party.
Right. Very true. And also, on multiple forums, I mentioned it even before I was introducing you, that India's failures of governance arises from bad policy. It's not poor implementation that causes India's problem. So also you said that for bad policy can never be implemented properly in the first place. So but now we have so many policies that are being framed. They're talking about NREGA. I don't know whether these are all very high-end things to talk about. At least to a stage of you'd understand all of this much better. But they're talking about money transfer scheme. They're talking about NREGA. So also, on the other note, give us a sense of what are some of the good policies that you have seen in the recent past, and what are the bad policies that needs to be routed out?
I think good policies would be almost nothing. I would be very hard pressed to find a single good policy. But let's analyze the point that you were making a bit, because I actually believe that very strongly. In fact, I have strong differences with even people like Gurcharan Das, who are otherwise quite talking the right message, but each time they sort of get confused. And I'm sorry to say, but Gurcharan, if he's listening, he knows I speak as bluntly as I am right now with everybody. That unfortunately, this is not the way the policy design operates in any sensible policy thinking framework. So, for example, recently we had a policy competition on the Freedom Team of India, and I put out in a template 10 questions which are to be considered while designing any policy. Apart from the fact that you consider the basic role of government, you have to consider two major questions in any policy that you design. The first question is, how can the customer, that is the recipient of a particular program or the particular service or whatever, how can that particular person, or even the taxpayer, if you have a tax policy, how can that particular client or customer or citizen actually cheat you? Now, the word I'm using, cheat you, quite deliberately, because that is a critical part of serious economic thinking, which is called moral hazard. There are opportunities. If you create opportunities in any policy for cheating, you're going to almost certainly see that as a fact of life. So good policy actually begins by an analysis of, firstly, that question, right? Once you've done that analysis, you are in a position to eliminate those barriers or gaps or whatever. So that is one thing that's completely missing. For example, public distribution system, you consider two sets of wheat being sold at different prices, virtually the same. You can hardly distinguish the two in many cases, but the prices are different because they operate under different schemes. Now, there is a massive amount of arbitrage opportunity in terms of crores and crores of rupees, which every single minister that I've come across in food and civil supplies has been pocketing huge tons of money from this particular scheme. So what is the methodology? Well, there's massive thousands of tons of material to be distributed. Well, you just take it in trucks and send it to the private guy who will pay you a much higher price. So basically, the minister has started selling the wheat that is meant for the poor. And why so? Right. Because the policy did not analyze that this is the fundamental gap. I mean, any stupid man, you can ask a person on the street, he will tell you, I'm not saying a person on the street is stupid, I'm saying anybody can actually tell you at a glance that this policy is waiting to be cheated, right? Somebody's going to cheat you. But what I just referred to was the second part of the question, which is that, is your policy robust enough for delivery by the government? Remember, the government is not, the bureaucrat is not your, you don't control the bureaucrat, right? Once you create a policy, you're thinking in the secretariat, you write a policy, you design it, and you implement it. Its actual implementation is done on the ground by a lot of, policy people and implementation people, and obviously ministers get involved. So at that stage, what you see is that, is the policy robust enough for these guys? Are these guys going to cheat? And I said the minister is cheating. Of course the minister is going to cheat. In the system, so what we have is two failures in policy design. They do not ever consider these two fundamental questions, apart from the basic question about, is there a role for government, which I think is the most fundamental question. But leaving that aside, even when you design a policy where there is a role for government, there is no consideration of how the policy can be, what the moral hazard issues, both from the citizens and from the implementing agencies. And if you don't consider these two, you are not able to design the mechanisms for audit and prevention that will actually help it to be implemented properly. So it ultimately starts depending. Everybody says, and you might have heard this commonly in India, that this all depends on whether the person is a good man. Is a good district magistrate, he will make sure that at least something is being implemented. So it becomes very subjective depending on who is actually implementing it, rather than a systemic kind of a policy where if you go to the West, you probably can, you don't need to know who is the police commissioner or who is the, heading the council. Everything will happen the way it's supposed to happen regardless of who is the person on the top. That's a huge difference between India and the West, and that is because we don't have a process to think about policy. So this is where I say that the entire, I really can't think of a single good policy that I could say India has done some wonderful policy in this field. You take from education, health, public distribution, poverty removal. I've done all these policies in my life, and I can tell you it is completely a mess. Sorry about that, but unfortunately I can't give you a good example of a good policy.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty much, yeah, it's all based on your experiences, hypothesis or thesis or whatever it is that you've been you've been working through the system, so I can understand. So, sir, we have had Rajaram Boji, the ex-Konkan Railways MD, who participated in when he used to call an NRI Samay multiple times. He brings up a very interesting point, we talk about policies, implementation of policies. He says, of course, the root of all this corruption problem, the root of all these problems or evil is corruption, and when the policy is designed, they make it a deliberate sense to make sure all these people who are involved, the bureaucracy, the political clout, get something out of it, So he says he's a strong propagator of this Official Secrets Act. He says, in this modern world, any document, let's talk about a GO, a government order that's being prepared, all the documents pertaining to the GO that's been through the process should be put in the open domain, that means in the public domain, and that will basically rout corruption. So what do you think of his suggestion? He's consistently on his Rajaram Boji blogspot, I think, he's consistently pursuing it. He says if Official Secrecy Act is taken out and these bureaucrats are forced to put all the documents that they generate in the public domain, a lot of corruption can be eliminated. What do you think about this, sir?
I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that's at all causing any corruption. There can be Official Secrets Act and there'll be no corruption at the same time. That is because corruption is not related at all to the Official Secrets Act or to the transparency issue that you referred to. Yes, transparency is good and important, and in fact a democratic right. So I think we must ensure that there is less and less use of Official Secrets Act, which is I've been writing about. I don't think it's a good idea to have that act as far as
No, he says we'll have to tweak that act, right? He says that act is basically is blocking the entire the transparency side of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I'm not saying transparency is, it should be. We should not have more transparency. What I'm trying to say is slightly different. I'm saying it has got absolutely zero relationship with corruption. So let's sort of see why I differ on this particular point. Because corruption is essentially caused is related to the opportunities that you are going to create in the system and the incentives of the people who are operating in the system. So unless you've done the analysis both of the opportunities and the incentives, it really doesn't matter what you do with these documents, because the documents can be fudged. There is for example, consider Hiteshwar Saikia, the great chief minister of Assam. So one fine day he calls me to his cabinet room. I was director of rural development. I was actually kicked out of the job very shortly afterwards. But the point is, he calls me, and in my ears, he's telling me, can you give this contract, this big cement contract, to a particular party from Madhya Pradesh, a private party, and the contract is supposed to go under the rules to the lowest bidder, which is the Cement Corporation of India. And even though I'm not a great fan of public sector, but that is exactly what it was under the law. And second, they were supposed to get a preference anyway. So even if they had not been the lowest, they would have got a preference under the law. So I just followed the law, and they had to get it, and so I signed the order basically in favor of Cement Corporation of India to deliver about, I think, a few crore rupees of worth of cement that time. Now, just imagine, you talk about transparency. I'm just explaining a little bit. Imagine I was a corrupt guy, right? And imagine that I had to, I like Hiteshwar Saikia. He's giving me a few lakh rupees for signing this thing, and he's getting his few lakh rupees. Let us say I'm participating in the corruption, which is going on all the time in the country. Now, what will I do? I, as a, very, very conscientious fellow who is very smart, who will write down all the necessary reasons why that particular, lowest tender is wrong, okay? I can write down 45 reasons to exclude the Cement Corporation of India. And there's nothing on the world that you can do, nothing in the world, to say that this was wrong. So I can put out that document publicly after that, okay? Which is, by the way, not a good thing, because it's a commercial and confidence document in terms of pricing and so on. That's not a normally good thing anywhere in the world. You don't put out the commercial tender documents publicly like that. But assuming that you do that, what would happen? Corruption would still have happened, okay? And you could never catch it. So corruption is not related to the transparency. There can be as much transparency as you want, and you'll still find hundreds of crores of leakages going on. So it's ultimately to do with the people who are operating in the system. and to do with the opportunities and the incentives. So imagine I had the opportunity, right? So I'm a director of a big department. I have an opportunity, and Hitesh Saik is basically wanting me to, get, because he would not normally bother me, but in this case, because the money is so big, at that point in time, it was 1992 or something, a few 100 crores, the budget was quite big at that time for politicians. They're all looking at my office. And so these guys have a great incentive. And opportunity is what? Just a piece of paper in which I have to sign is worth tens of lakhs of rupees. So this is where the incentive. If there's anybody else, that's where the problem comes in, that the incentives are completely skewed. That means that's coming right from the top. All the corruption in India is coming 100% from the top, not from the bottom. Okay? So if you are being rewarded for corruption, and that's what I was, immediately kicked out from that job. You can see my records. In 2 months, in a few weeks, I was completely removed from that job and given a junk job as usual. That's what they do. But here we talk of what is a politician's incentive. So you have to find out why is Hitesh Saik corrupt. If you don't understand that, then you cannot understand corruption. And he was not, when he was born as a child, we have to go back in history, right? Is any child corrupt? There is no possibility, right? So what happened in his life that he was finally persuaded to corruption? Well, the incentives in the political system of India, the electoral system. It is impossible, actually, virtually impossible for honest people to contest elections. So that is what I explain in my book, which is something I've been explaining for 15 years. But really, that is the underlying cause. So when we talk of corruption, you must look at the incentives. Incentives are coming because even a good man, maybe Hitesh Saik is a good man, at least a good child, I would say, definitely. This is not a corrupt child.
Right.
But one fine day he decides to join this corruption. And what is that reason for that? And he realizes that there's no way that he can actually get elected without being badmashi. And so when there is no choice, you see, today I had a choice, right? I packed up my bags and left India because I applied for a visa and they gave me a visa. I said, get out of this place. So I had a choice. I could leave. So most things I don't have a choice. I have to work within India because nobody is accepting me out of the world. I have no, Hitesh Saik doesn't have a PhD in economics. He can't come and get a job here. He'll have to work as a small taxi driver. So, but I can get a job as a reasonable person. No, a person with absolutely no choice except to work in India. He is forced under the system to do exactly what the system requires him to do, which is to be corrupt. So I do not blame the politicians. You see, I'm quite different from the other guys who are continuously blaming politicians. I'm not blaming politicians. I'm saying that you give me the system and I can guarantee this is what people will behave like. Okay, I can guarantee that people will be corrupt on average under the current system in India. So what we need is ultimately we need system reform because this transparency is simply a myth. The RTI is a myth. You can have as much of Jan Lokpal, RTI, all this stuff. This is not going to solve corruption. Corruption happens in a different way. Bhai, बहुत subtle hai, very intelligent people. Hitesh Saik's intelligence is 10 times more than me, okay? People at the political level, let me tell you, if you have met them, their intelligence is unbelievable. Their memory is brilliant. They are so smart. And they will never ever, have a system where people are caught with, there are some fools ministers who got caught with, the crores of rupees in their house. But the smart guys never get caught, okay? So corruption will never be caught unless you have fixed the system because it is so subtle. It is the most subtle thing to detect, and transparency will never solve it. So I sort of, beg to differ from that perspective of transparency as the solution.
Absolutely, yeah. And you brought in some interesting perspectives as well. Let me slide down a little bit onto the Freedom Team of India because we are talking a little bit on how politics work. So the last decade, we have seen few IPS, IRS, IAS officers taking a plunge into politics, right? So what's this phenomenon all about? Each one of them start a party. Kejriwal started Aam Aadmi Party. Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan starts Lok Satta Party. And I imagine you are very, very early in the game and started Freedom Team of India and, of course, many platforms. Every elite person having extreme sense of how the constitution, how the politics, how the bureaucracy works, starting their own party, saying that this is what works for the country and these are the policy changes. So, because the most important thing I want to try in this interview is how unleashing what Sanjeev is and how he could bring out the differences. So I wanted to again ask the same question. What are these platforms doing right and what is that they're doing wrong? And how could you basically fix this?
Okay, look, this is a very interesting question because I've actually been in this business of politics or thinking about politics since 1998, whereas many times I've tried JP at that time, and he was simply not interested. He had an NGO, and in 2004 I invited him for a 1-week conference which I organized in Delhi, and even then he refused to join politics. And so finally in 2006 he did something. Similar, then by the time I had supported Swatantra Bharat Party of Sharad Joshi, who finally got a seat in the Rajya Sabha. And he did some fairly good work, and he's still around, by the way. Sharad Joshi is a very good, liberal, one of the best thinkers I can say in India at the moment. So
is the party still there?
Here is that coming back to, sorry.
Is the party still is the party still active and
yes,
Sharadji is active?
Yes. Swatantra Bharat Party is definitely active. In fact, he is going to contest elections. Some people have been contesting in so they had some MLAs in Maharashtra Assembly as well. So he's been in this business for a long time, and he was from one of these allied central services as well. So Sharad Joshi is also one of the civil servants. Okay, so he abandoned his job and started working in a farm, led the Shetkari Sangathan, which is one of the largest farmers movement in the world in the 1980s. But leave that aside. Right now we're talking about JP. So JP then formed his party in 2006, and that is why I was very pleased with that, because obviously this is something I've been asking him since a long time.
Right.
So he formed his party. That's great stuff. And I've been working with, let's say, in the meanwhile, things obviously have changed. So, for example, I came to the view that actually forming these parties may not be the right thing at all. So, as you might notice, I stopped forming parties, etc., or bothering about them somewhere around 2005. I realized that the main thing that's blocking us is not having a party, which can be done in 5 minutes. But the main thing that's blocking India is actually the middle class, who are so scared of dirty politics and all that stuff, and there are some genuine reasons for that. Okay, so the main thing for me was to try to attract more people, which is why the Freedom Team of India came to my mind sometime in 2006, and I started in 2007, December, and wrote about it in my book, which was published in 2008, etc. So the Freedom Team of India is basically designed to bring together all people who want to join politics in India, but who have an agreement to a broad vision of classical liberalism. So we're talking about, standard good policy, evidence-based stuff, openness, and of society and thinking and critical thinking. So this kind of basic ideas of liberalism, which are pretty traditional, are what I would hope that we can have a lot of people assemble. So we have now got about 150 people, out of which I think about 60 are active and others are not active. But leaving that aside, this is where my effort was focused on. Now, you're talking about the Arvind Kejriwal effort. Now, Arvind Kejriwal's effort obviously is quite a different cup of tea. So the first thing is I have definitely been persuading everybody, including Arvind, to please consider, first of all, join politics. Don't just stand outside and make this halla on the streets, because that's all good. But really, at the end of the day, if you want to change the system, you have to change the laws, and you have to actually occupy the positions of ministers. And that is why I went to Arvind in February last year, and actually in my conversation with him, I persuaded him. I tried my best to say, please join politics, Arvind, ye sab theek hai. And he at that time said, no, he's thinking about it. Now then, of course, he started sometime later last year. Don't link up with my persuasion with anything that either JP or Arvind have done, because they obviously are thinking in the old line, so my persuasion doesn't mean anything. Having said that, the difference is quite stark between what Arvind wants and what JP wants. So JP and I are constantly in touch, and I support Lok Sabha quite actively, which is to say, because its policies are quite sensible. The Freedom Team of India, by the way, is not a party, right? So it's only a group of people. And we encourage our people to, if they want to contest elections, to use any of these platforms. So some of them, for example, are members of Lok Sabha. Some of them have taken membership of another party called Bharat Uday Mission. Similarly, I think Jago Party is more or less on the same track in terms of broadly liberal ideas, and so on. So we sort of encourage these guys. But in fact, some FTA members have joined the Arvind's party as well. Having said that, the differences are quite stark. If you think about the approach that Arvind takes, or his group takes, which is Prashant Bhushan and Yogendra Yadav, compared to, say, for example, what Jayaprakash Narayan takes or I take, they're quite dramatically different. So I'm quite happy to work with JP, but I am unable to, unfortunately, work with his party, even though I wanted him to join politics, which he's done, which I commend him for that, and he's a very good, honest man. So let us say that, give him due credit for that, for having revolutionized, for having got a lot of young people involved in politics, etc. which is all great stuff, right? But now comes the question of, your question is why, and the question is, which is better or whatever. I forget the question detail. But really, the real issue here is there are some real fundamental differences. It's not good enough to simply say that just because people have certain experience, that they all come out with the same answer. And my answer is quite different to Arvind's answer. So his answer is to somehow create a complete decentralization, but that's wonderful stuff. But there is simply no empirical model around that decentralization. So there is no, subsidiarity is one of the big things that I talk about, but there's no systemic study of policy making, nor any systemic study of governance structures. So, for example, new public management, that's one of the big disciplines in the field of public administration, but there is simply no inkling or no reference to any of these modern thinkings which talk about incentives and opportunities, and the whole analysis, let's say, of public policy is completely missing from his analysis. So he's gone back, in my view, to the 1970s. There was this, based on the Jayaprakash Narayan movement and the Swaraj, activists of that period, there was this great, motivation to go back to the villages and decentralize, etc. Now that's all wonderful stuff, but Jayaprakash Narayan was on top of that a very strong classical liberal. He was a constitutional man. He wanted constitutional process. He wanted law and order and justice and so on. So these are things which Jayaprakash Narayan was pretty good at. Unfortunately, I don't see that. So there are these differences, right? So we can't just gloss over the fact simply because, we have got the same background, let's say, in public service. The reality is that the interpretations can be quite different. And I think they are all done in good faith. So I'm not saying that he's deliberately trying to mislead India, but that is his perspective. And I think we have genuine differences, which I continuously, continue to raise and hope that, he will have a debate with me one fine day, because he has actually been avoiding any discussion with me on policy matters. But if he does, for example, I'm quite happy to join him and, support him. Look, it's not an issue at all.
So also the fundamental thing, one of the chapters, of course, I didn't read the complete book, and it would be unfair commenting anything, but I get a sense of, like you mentioned, Guru Charan Das, the journalists and other people who are writing a lot about your book, and it took me an intense reading of how others think about your book. So in the chapter, the most key concepts of, you talk about capitalism against the socialism, and a lot of things that you justify, and you say that capitalism is a good solution for attaining the ultimate freedom. So, and also, do you think those are some of the lines that even recently I've been hearing about Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan Lok Satta Party supporting many different the Monsanto genetically modified trials that they support. They've put in a case in the Supreme Court, and they say that the diesel price should be high. They say that the nuclear power is needed. So many people claim that Dr. JP is getting into the capitalistic mode. Is that inclination really showing up between you people? And also on the stark other side of things is Aam Aadmi Party saying Aam Aadmi kind of language which they could understand, getting literally closer to the socialistic ideas that you mentioned in your blog as well. And but they claim that they are neither right or left. Whatever is useful for Aam Aadmi is what they do, and that's the recent politics. Is that what makes you, the capitalistic thought process makes you very much inclined to Lok Satta and not to the Aam Aadmi Party?
Yeah, look, what is capitalism? I mean, the whole point is, the word capitalism is so badly misused and obviously started by Karl Marx, because of that history, and it has a different interpretation. So it's actually a derogatory word used in a very bad way. This is a capitalist and whatnot. So that's all fine, right? And I fully agree with that part of the derogatory thing. So crony capitalists, for example, the classic example in which I fully agree with Prashant Bhushan, for example, is the idea of the bureaucrats and the politicians selling off great assets, or Modi selling off great assets at throwaway prices to pet companies and so on. And so what is going on there is that people are funding the political parties. It's a complete circle out there, a massive racket. And that is something which I totally oppose. And that is illegal, unethical, immoral, bad for the country. It's loot and all those bad things. So to that extent, I fully agree with the fact that crony capitalism is bad, right? So Now, that is not capitalism, though. There's a difference, right? It is crony capitalism. That's a slight difference between the two. And the reason why it is different is that in a capitalist model, which is basically the one which is based on morality and ethics, then people are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And your systems are working appropriately based on the proper systems. So, for example, in my department here in Australia, I work in Treasury and Finance. The secretary is paid about $500,000, which obviously is more than that because of the Australian dollar being higher than US dollar. So imagine he's getting about $550 or some $525,000 in US currency, or a little bit more. And he's a very simple man. He's very, very efficient, and he makes sure that everything works like a clockwork, and the good policies are continuously being provided to cabinet and so on and so forth. So. And he also manages massive budgets, right? So there are huge amounts of money that are floating around, including in the department. And guess what? There is not the slightest corruption, right? So what we're seeing here is this is called capitalism, which capitalism is nothing but the freedom of people, which is called the system of natural liberty, which is what Adam Smith said. Now we talk of that system of natural liberty as capitalism, which means that you are transcribing and circumscribing your actions around a particular, accountability measure. So you're not simply saying, I've got this great amount of money and so on and so forth, but why is this man so good? Well, he can be dismissed without recourse, by the way, and instantly within 5 seconds. So he can be dismissed and given 4 months' salary and said goodbye. And in fact, this happened many times with both secretaries and senior officials. Something goes wrong, they haven't done the job properly, and they're terminated instantly on the spot. So that is pretty good. So what happens now is that he's accountable for his actions. If, for example, he has corruption going on, then he's thrown out, and he's also put behind the bars. So look, in this capitalist model that I talk about, we are talking about, but second point, why will a good man join as a secretary of the government with such kind of rigorous conditions? Well, he'll join only if he's paid well. Imagine a private sector company. You want to get good talent, and he's very, very talented, let me tell you, our secretary. Is a phenomenally talented guy. And so to get that kind of talent, you have to pay appropriately in the private sector. So the rule is to have compatibility and comparability of salaries with the private sector so that you can get good people in the government as well. But once you get them, you also treat them exactly like they are private people, which is you have a contract, and then you can kick them out if they don't work or don't deliver results. So we talk of accountability as the fundamental feature of capitalism compared to what is crony capitalism, which has got no accountability at all, and there's no way to defeat the people who are involved. Whereas in this system, it's very simple. You just dismiss the guy who's so what I keep telling people, like I spoke in my speech at Haridwar with Ramdev the other day, I said, look, you have to abolish the IAS. He said, what? You're going to abolish the IAS? Of course. IAS is totally redundant. You don't need any of these kind of things, because what you need is a contractual civil service at the top level, which is going to be held accountable. That means instead of running around and having Jan Lokpal and Official Secrets Act and all this kind of stuff, which is all good, but what you need is simply there's one secretary at the top. Okay, if there's any corruption in his department, sir, your job is gone. Over. You're over. You're back on the streets. How simple is that? Now that is how the system works in the world, but unfortunately in India. In fact, when I was in Los Angeles, I remember the same thing. A police commissioner had done, I think, $400 of something. He had accepted a gift while he had gone to Las Vegas or something. The police commissioner of Los Angeles was terminated on the spot. Okay? Whoa. $400 he had taken a gift or something, which came out in the newspapers. Terminated, finished, over, no more back in the government at all. End of the story. You're not IS. You're not like transferred somewhere. You're kicked out. End of the story. You're on the streets. Okay? And if you've done something wrong, your superannuation or any of the benefit is removed. And if you've done something really wrong, you're put behind bars. This is how the world runs. But in India, we have this, IS is considered a godly civil service, which means you join the thing at 22 and you remain till 60. And in fact, you can be extended and become governor, etc. Till 75, you're doing something, and so on. Finally, till 90, you're doing something in public life. You are getting this massive amounts of money constantly from the society, but nobody can hold you accountable. Now, that is what I call capitalism, where accountability is the foundational principle. You don't have just freedom, but you have accountability. And that, if I think we introduce in India, and I think you should see that it makes sense, isn't it? Because why don't you simply do the corruption system by kicking out the man at the top? Why just run after this whole Jan Lokpal tamasha? Just kick out the man. End of the story. Your IS officer is gone. permanently finished. But today you can't, because Constitution of India protects him. And there's massive amount of inquiries. So I was state inquiry officer in Assam, the head of the inquiry system, and I can tell you this is a total mess. So you can be, you can drag on inquiries forever, and finally you have to pay off some money to the ministers and this and that and judges and so on. In fact, judges as well. Let me not just shirk the truth. So the people are paying all this kind of system, and finally they are reinstated. So corrupt man can be, suspended, but is reinstated in 2 or 3 years, and he becomes promoted to a senior position. So in this model, what we have in India, which is called socialist model, we also have what is called the colonial model embedded into that. So we have aristocratic models of India, which are feudalistic and aristocratic, which is what, big man, the government is a big king of ours, rather than being a servant. I mean, government is supposed to be my servant. India, we make it our God, and so on. So, this is the broad concept here.
Sir, you're talking about Jan Lokpal and how it is not really relevant in the nature of politics and the nature of governance that we have right now. Sir, Anna Hazare had brought in the national movement. I'm sure when you mentioned in our conversation that the middle class is not really is not really making a difference to when it comes to politics and other things. Right now, the situation seems to be ripe. This is a defining movement, and we have seen middle class, all these women, everyone coming onto the streets. Do you think it's the right time to come back and pursue your ambitions further? Forget about the word ambition. Let's imagine that. Do you think it's the right time to pursue the goals for the
ambition is
country?
Simply, see, Shrikant, I told you my ambition. What is my ambition? My ambition is that I should be, somehow India should be in the right track, and then I will go and do my other things in life. Because really, it has been a big waste of my 30 years. Well, I shouldn't be saying waste. It's a learning experience, and also I've lived my life. But in this 30 years, I have not actually found what I wanted, which is the good kind of governance. So if I can get this system started in some form or shape or help in any form or shape, I will be most pleased. Then I can actually do other things. So it's not an ambition for me, but an ambition for me to go and do other things, right, which I want to do, which is, as I said, painting and science and general, walking around and the hills and so on. So those kind of things are completely not done because I've been completely massively, involved in this activity to fix India's mess, which is so straightforward to fix, but nobody seems to get it easily. Well, people are getting it now. But so now the question was what do I do? Should I come back? Of course I will come back. I mean, that is why I the other day I had gone to India for 3 weeks. Ramdev called me on the phone, and I think we had 2 conversations, and I decided to go. Similarly, Anna's group, there was a kind of conversation happening with them in terms of how we can, the Freedom Team people can support some of their ideas and, do some thinking for them. And so we are working with them as well, and including, presentation to Anna of some of the ideas that we had. Those ideas have already changed, by the way. Let's not go into the details. But the reality is that there's obviously an interest in having, real, genuine reforms. And the reality is, unfortunately, that Anna, despite all the good intentions, and Ramdev, despite all his good intentions, the reality is that they haven't understood exactly how a good governance system works. So I actually keep inviting people, if you come over for 3-4 days to Australia, I'll sort of, sit and have a longish chat and show you around and, and show you why a particular thing works in the particular way that you see it working, like parking tickets and so on. How does it actually work? Why does it work this way? Why not some other way? Why is there no cheating, etc.? So this is very detailed, in-depth analysis of policy that is done in the world but not done in India. So but the point I'm making is that there is now an interest. That is why Ramdev, obviously called me. I gave a speech there. I was there for about 10 days altogether. And I'm trying to work on a movement at this point in time called the Sonegi Choya movement. So Freedom Team of India is a group of leaders. It is not a movement, okay? Whereas the Sonegi Choya movement that was launched on the 26th of January this year, the Republic Day, it's at sonegichoya.in, S-O-N-E, Sonegichoya, .in. It's a movement that has been launched. Now the launch is very, very soft. There's nothing like a big launch or massive event. But essentially, we have put out a vision out there on that document, on that website, and we are now going to organize, hopefully, a meeting in April in which we will bring together those who really who agree with the vision. See, it's very important to have agreement only on policy before you start going into details. So the broad vision is something that I've been helping to write, along with, of course, other members of the team, Freedom Team. And in fact, we have got feedback from a number of eminent people outside that group as well. So this vision will continuously improve. And so once we have that vision, my view is that if people can agree in the month of April that they actually want to do a major national movement for reform, then of course, there's a possibility that I might say, okay, bhaiya, वापस आ जाओ, कुछ होने वाला है. Because if there's something going to happen, I would not have left India in the first place had something happened. I won't go to details, but 3 times I've tried various things in the past, and there was no appetite for change. Today, there's obviously an appetite for change. The problem, unfortunately, is that people like Arvind, for example, who should have actually paid attention to what I'm trying to suggest, simply because he actually doesn't have the kind of experience that I have. So he might actually just listen to me for nothing else, if nothing else. But he doesn't want to. He sort of got his own ideas. He's got his 1970s ideas that he's made up his mind. Now, in that case, we are missing one plank of the whole platform. Now, Arvind is a very important plank of the platform, but he's working in a different plane. And he doesn't talk my language at all. You can see he's talking all sorts of socialist ideas at the moment. And they are completely wrong, because he doesn't understand that you cannot implement those ideas. His failure to understand is that the ideas are good, but they cannot be implemented.
Yeah,
and so he must learn to understand how policy is made. Yeah.
Yeah, but the fundamental question is, the fundamental question is the other side. Let's take the Congress, the BJP. The language is very simple, sir. It's like, what do you want and what do I want? It's just period. It just ends there, right? So they know that, hey, give me those numbers. You win. You by hook or crook, you win the election. Come and add up to our number, and that's all that matters. And then we'll make sure that you get what you want. But on the other side, these elite people, right? All Kejriwal talking some language which is in a different length. Dr. JP talking a different length. Jago Party talking about something else. So, where do you think is the intersection point? Unless these forces don't intersect, there's nothing that's going to happen. These guys are sitting in Delhi, lifting their hands. Ram Vilas Paswan, Mulayam Singh Yadav, all these Lok Naik JP's derivatives are all lifting their hands in Delhi and already talking about third front. They know that Congress is not going to make it, and BJP is unable to bridge the Hindu and Hindutva gap. So they're sure pretty confident that, and Mulayam Singh making his own plans. How do we intersect all these forces, sir?
See, let's be sort of be patient here, because really the fact of the matter is, in India there are people in the middle class who are completely sleeping. Okay, for the last 60 years they were sleeping very soundly. They was not bothered at all about what's going on, because they were getting free subsidized schools, free subsidized universities. IITs were practically free, etc. So they were all getting all the benefits of the system. Then they would go and settle abroad, right? And so they were enjoying comfortably in the system. So they were not bothered. Now only a little bit security issues are coming, and some prices, etc., are bothering them, and the crowds are bothering them, and so on. So the middle class slightly interested in politics. Okay. Till today, however, middle class does not pay a single paisa, not 1 rupee of political money they are willing to spend. Okay. So unlike in USA, where Obama managed to raise, I think I would say 100 million or maybe more than 100 million from the average American, in India there is no culture of paying 1 paisa. Okay. So the question is, if you are going to run elections, and we first of all don't even have leaders, I've been struggling to find people to join the Freedom Team of India or any such political effort. So despite it looks very big from top, when you sit in USA or Australia, all the headlines about Anna Hazare and this and that, the total number of people in that group is not more than 50.
Right.
The people who are organizing are not more than 50 in Anna's team or in Kejriwal's team or anybody's team. There are 50 people maximum. And so with this kind of and by the way, they have no money. They are all professionals now. Many of them are putting voluntary time, and some are putting a lot of their own money. Like I put a lot of my own money to go up and down to India, do this, that, and to a number of other things I won't go into detail. But so putting your own money, but you can only do so much. So we have a culture in India which cannot be defeated by simply expecting things to change. So we have all these great middle class heroes straddling the Indian scene, but they actually are zeros, because they will get 0 votes. We have Arun Bhatias, we've got Meera Sanyals, we've got so many examples, Kapil Gopinath, and God knows what. And I can tell you, JP's own party, he got 1 seat, he contested 200. I can tell you, Arvind will probably get 2 seats, if he contests Delhi.
Oh my
the reality is that they don't have money. Okay, so without money you can't run elections. So let us say that if I am to come back, there's no point in my wasting time unless I see the desire of India expressed through the willingness to pay for reform. If people are simply going to sit and write letters to the editor or write on the blogs and so on and expect wonderful things, I'm sorry, it won't happen. It cannot happen, because you are fighting an enemy. In this case, I use the word enemy for the existing political parties which are totally corrupt. You are fighting an enemy who is now so wealthy in the form of black money that they've accumulated, that they can afford to pay each single voter in this process. They can afford to pay thousands of rupees to each single voter in that entire constituency. Okay, forget the idea of total expenditure within 45 lakhs, which is the limit. They are well into the tens of crores of rupees per constituency.
Right.
In that model, the total money that Arvind has collected, you know how much? Around 2 crores, out of which 1 crore has been paid by Prashant Bhushan himself. Okay.
Right.
I was looking at JP's website the other day, and in 3 years or 4 years, his total earnings has not exceeded all combined. The total donations to Lok Sabha is well in the range of about 60-70 lakh rupees after 3-4 years.
Right.
So when you look at this reality, let me tell you, there's no chance. Okay, so currently, let us say that the middle class of India is not serious. They are simply sleeping a little bit. They are just woken up. Subah urta, they're rubbing their eyes and saying, something is bothering me, an ant is biting me. But they're not serious because they are seriously still getting the benefits of the system, and everybody else is suffering. They get the drivers, they get Mali, they get Chaprasi, they get this, that. Why will they bother about the system here? They don't care for changing the system. They're happy with that. Only when one person, somebody dies or killed or something happens, then they make a tamasha and they go to Delhi and start doing some, various kind of protests. Otherwise, they're not bothered. So corruption doesn't bother them because they're part of the whole system. This is the reality of India. We've got to be very practical. Unless these people are willing to pay money, this is not going to happen. So wasting my time and saying, I'll go back. Look, at the end of 65, whatever I reach 65 years of age, I'm done with all this business. I've tried my best. I have my own life to lead. This is not my only goal in life. This was a secondary goal. I will try my best, but if India is not interested, why do I go running after them? Having said that, let's not be so cynical. Let's be more optimistic, because there is actually a desire. As I said, Ramdev has expressed a desire. Anna's team is expressing some desire.
How relevant is Baba Ramdev in this current spectrum of things, sir, in the political spectrum?
I don't know about relevance. My only point is that, look, among the people who oppose corruption and who oppose this kind of misgovernance, he's one of them. So there are, in India, there's no politician who's going to talk against corruption, okay? There is nobody, because they all participate in it in a big way. So at least there are 3 or 4 people talking about corruption in India. Then, of course, I have to at least give them some regard and, participate with them. So Ramdev has got lakhs of people on the ground and what is called Bharat Swabhaman Trust. And, he's obviously been working on, he's got a lot of followers and fans across the world. As far as politics is concerned, I don't know. I'm simply saying that, look, Sone Ki Chiriya movement I am starting, which has been launched, which is not me starting. It's a number of people, let's say, not me, but, a group of people. Let us say that this particular movement takes off. Then what is the signal that I'm looking for? There are 2 things. You need resources. You need people. You need volunteers who want to do something about it and who are serious about it. And you need money. Okay, if the signal doesn't come strong and clear. Now, for example, JP can sit in Hyderabad and, spend his whole life there. I don't know how he manages his livelihood, but I actually earn more than what he's earned in his entire life as politician, in this entire party. I earn more than that in 1 year, okay? So if I am to sort of, lose my salary to go and sort of work in India for the sake of some, few thousand rupees here and there, what do I do? How do I eat? I have no retirement benefits. I have nothing out. I resigned the job. I have no pension, nothing coming from anywhere. I have to earn my livelihood. So the reality is that we are all stuck here in our own cycle. And unless we can get the strong signal. So Ramdev is very powerful, obviously in terms of his following. If some of his followers decide to contribute funds to the movement, or if others decide, the middle class decides that they want to really seriously change things, then of course, people like me can go back and, a number of others can join. So my appeal to you, to all your listeners in USA particularly, look, this is a political thing, so I can't appeal to people who are not citizens, but anybody who's a citizen of India, they should actually seriously think about contributing money to these groups, whether they like Arvind or they like JP or whoever, or, let them contribute some funds. Or the Freedom Team, for example. Freedom Team, how much money we have got in the last 5 years? 88,000 rupees. 88,000 rupees I've been running the Freedom Team. That is the total amount of money we have actually accepted. Now, of course, we got 5 lakh rupees for a competition, which we're going to distribute, and that was raised in about 15-20 days. But the reality is that, people are very, very stingy. Yeah? In India, they are willing to spend, for 5,000 rupees on a dinner, in fact, much more than 5,000 on a simple dinner for 5 people, but they will not put, 100 rupees for a political exercise. So with this culture of India of complete indifference, let's not be too optimistic. Let's not get carried away. But yes, you're right. There is an opportunity. I'm definitely, keenly working with everybody who's willing to work in that space. And I invite everybody else to please, try to do something. Because it's not my danda. It's everybody's baby. India is a huge country.
Right.
And if you can fix it, and the problems are solutions are very simple once we understand them. And once we can do that, then we have to change the laws. We have to fix the system so that, electoral reforms are required so that bad people can't enter the system. Currently, only the bad people can enter the system. And so on. I won't go into detail. But this is where the broad idea is, that we have to actually wake up the country.
Absolutely, sir. Perfectly well said. Very well said. And also, I was thinking of asking what's your appeal to our listeners, and you also touched upon that topic as well. Sanjeev Sabhlok ji, it's a great pleasure, delight, and honor. It's almost like an educational session for me as well. So I thanks a bunch, sir, for coming on air and then talking about all these very, very critical things, covering almost every topic that's around there. I don't know how much did I cover, but almost you've touched upon every different topic out there.
Yes, we talked a lot. Yes.
So it's a great pleasure.
All right.
Sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Bye. So friends, that was Sanjeev Sabhlok ji, and it is, as I mentioned, it's a truly educative session for me as well. And as I mentioned, Sanjeev Sabhlok ji is an ex-Indian bureaucrat who joined the Indian Administrative Service in the year 1982, worked for almost 18 years, is now a political philosopher, Indian politician, now the multiple shades to his personality, be a bureaucrat into politics, into blogging, economics, writer, author, and also he's mentioned right now that about his interest in science and painting. It's I don't know, it's so many things in a single personality. And also Sanjeev ji propagates on many forums that India's failure of governance arises from bad policy. It's not the poor implementation that causes the Indian problems, because the bad policy is where it all starts off with. So please do visit his revolutionary blog. It is it is sabhlokcity.com, sabhlokcity.com. And also he started the recent, as he mentioned in this call, he started the Sone Ki Chidiya movement as well. It is sonekichidiya.in. Let me try to Google and then see if I can get the details as well. I think let me try to figure out the website details here. It's sonekichidiya.in. You can Google it, friends, on as well. And also, I wanted to mention that Sanjeev ji, in February 1988, he thought that the bad politics cannot be changed by existing political and bureaucratic leaders, and he therefore joined. He thought of joining or even forming a national liberal political front, and of course it didn't take off very well, as he mentioned in this call, due to various reasons. So he resigned from his IAS in January 2001, and of course it was a great learning and a sense of understanding of where he's talking from. So it's a great session. I hope you all enjoyed today's show, and thank you very much for tuning in to NRI Samay. Do visit us at nrisamay.com every week, Saturday and Sunday, for live shows, 9:30 p.m. India time, 8 a.m. Pacific time, USA time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And also it's London time, 4 p.m. London time. So you can also listen to all our archives at youtube.com/NRI Samay. Do like us on Facebook, facebook.com/NRI Samay. And also you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/NRI Samay. Thank you very much, friends, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you. Bye.